Once you have external IFC models linked into ArchiCAD and you go through a number of cycles of doing the same, eventually you're going to have to check the difference between one IFC model and the next IFC model. That is, checking the differences between the two different models you have received through time. And in ArchiCAD, that's something that is fairly easy to do. So let's assume this IFC for the structural element, the one we have received, let's assume that is the most current one. And for the sake of argument, let's assume that you have a previous one, an older IFC, and you just want to know what will be the difference, since sometimes the differences can be so small that are difficult to pinpoint. So what we're going to do is to review the two IFCs we have on the resource files. So let's bring in that list. And that should look something like this. You should have a structural file that is tagged as old, and then the most current structural file right there. And what we're going to do is compare the two using ArchiCAD IFC checking tools. So let's start by moving this away. And now let's go through your file menu, interoperability, IFC, and detect IFC model changes. Just click on that. And now this interface will allow us to compare an older version of the model with a newer version of the model. It is important that you use the same translator we built for the purpose of linking that file. So let's start by choosing the structural link translator. Browse through your folders to link in the older version of the model. So that'll be this. Then let's link in the newest or current version of the model. And click on Next. Click on OK to drop the elements into the embedded library. And now on this next interface, you'll find that you can filter the elements that will be detected for the changes. And you can detect those or analyze the preliminary results based on stories. So that's now telling me that there are changes on story 8, 10, and 11, or by the layer, telling you that there are some changes to walls in the layer walls, some changes to columns in the layer S columns, or a combination of the two. So we're going to keep that in mind, and you can actually select and unselect changes if you don't want to bring them on. That'll be the case where you may need to restrict the changes to a single story. For example, I'm not going to compare the site. That won't be relevant right now. So I'm going to bring in all the changes and click on Next. On this next interface, ArchiCAD is telling you that there are no new elements, there are some modified elements, and there are no deleted elements. Now, it's also going to ask you where to drop those multiple different elements. So that's going to be the old and the new. So I'm going to actually change the naming, just barely change the naming of those layers. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm simply going to call this structural old IFC. And I'm going to call this .str. That is going to create an extension for it. And the new one, I'm going to call it str new IFC .str. And that's going to drop the deleted and modified elements into the old layer and new modified into the new layer. Now let's click on Merge. Go through the alignment, which is going to be aligned through the survey point horizontally and vertically through the stories. And that's it. So let's go and take a look at what happened now. So what you're going to do now is to bring in the issue organizer, which is this option right here. And this has now created a report for us to go and check. So what you have in here is a single issue, depending on what has happened in the file. So we've got modified element 01, modified element 02, and modified element 03. So let's double click on this. Actually, let's just dock these up here. And let's simply start by opening or double clicking on the first issue. When you do that, you get the issue manager triggered, and you'll be able to see right here what elements have been either created new or modified. This is one element that has been modified, and you select them by using this option right here. Now, once that happens, Archicad will try to zoom into that. You can help it a little bit. So let's go to then View, Elements in 3D View, Show Selection. Or use your function 5 key on your keyboard. Now we have isolated the columns, and what you can tell there is that Archicad has color-coded both the old and the new. If you want to know, you just have to select it, and you'll see the layer stating that the green one is the new, while the red one is the old. So what has happened is that the new column has been moved up a little bit, and that might be a change that you want to approve or not. So with that, you will be able to go through all the elements. Let's go back and say show all. Select the elements on the second issue, then select them under the modify issue detail panel and select the elements. Now this one is right above there, and let's go ahead and do the same thing. Function 5. And let's rotate around the element and take a closer look. So this one, similarly, you've got the older model or wall sitting on the old layer, and then the new one sitting right there. So the new one has been moved to the left-hand side. Which one is right or wrong? That really depends on general checking that you'll have to do over the model. And let's check the element 3. So let's double click on this. Or select it here from the list. Like so. Then select the elements, and let's make sure we're showing everything. Select the elements from the list and hit select. And that's another one. So that'll be right on top of the parapet. And again, just another move. So here it's with the context, it will be a lot more clear which one is the right one. So once again, the red one is the old model. The old version of the model was wrong, but it has been corrected in the new one.